A Mustang once known for his strength and resilience now stands defeated. Spirit. A 30-year-old horse refuses to eat, his once fiery spirit seemingly extinguished. Day after day, the sanctuary staff tries to help him, but their efforts seem vain. However, a single voice from his past might hold the key to saving him. A voice he hasn't heard in years. This is a story about the unbreakable bond between humans and horses, a tale of hope, love, and redemption. Before we dive into this heartwarming journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories like this one. The Montana Mustang Sanctuary was a haven for horses rescued from neglect, abuse, or the harsh realities of the wild. Its wide-open fields stretched to the horizon, dotted with sturdy paddocks, each a symbol of renewal. Horses of all shapes and sizes grazed peacefully, their coats gleaming under the warm sun. But Spirit, the sanctuary's most iconic resident, stood apart, not because of his grandeur, but because of his haunting stillness. At 30 years old, Spirit was one of the oldest Mustangs. At the sanctuary, once a symbol of strength and resilience, he was now a shadow of his former self. His gaunt frame and dull eyes told a story of despair that no one fully understood. The sanctuary staff had tried everything to revive his spirit: fresh hay, sweet feed, even his favorite apples, but Spirit refused to eat. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, his frail body seemed to wither further. Emma, the sanctuary's manager, leaned against the wooden fence, her brow furrowed as she watched Spirit from a distance. "It's been over a week," she said softly, her voice tinged with worry. "He hasn't eaten a thing." Her assistant, Cole, approached with a bucket of sweet feed. "Maybe this will tempt him," he said, though the doubt in his voice was evident. Emma walked into the paddock cautiously, the bucket in her hands. She knelt a few feet from Spirit and placed the feed on the ground. "Hey boy," she whispered, "we've got something special for you." But Spirit didn't lift his head. His once proud ears now hung listlessly, and his powerful legs, which had carried him across endless plains in his youth, barely supported his weight. "He's giving up," Cole muttered, leaning on the fence. "It's like he's already made up his mind." Emma sighed heavily, her heart breaking for the once majestic stallion. She stayed in the paddock for hours, hoping Spirit would take even the smallest nibble. But he remained motionless. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the sanctuary, and Emma finally retreated to the office, her mind racing with questions she couldn't answer. That evening, Emma sat at her desk, a stack of old records and files in front of her. She'd sifted through papers detailing Spirit's history, searching for clues that might explain his sudden decline. The sanctuary had taken him in 5 years ago, but his past stretched much further than that. He had been captured as a young stallion, tamed after years in the wild, and passed through several owners before ending up at various sanctuaries. As Emma flipped through the pages, a photograph slipped from one of the folders. She picked it up and stared at the image: a younger Spirit, his coat glossy and his stance proud, standing beside a boy with a wide grin and windswept hair. They looked inseparable, a perfect duo. Scribbled below the image were the words "Spirit and Ethan." 2013. "Who's Ethan?" Emma asked aloud, holding the photo closer. She turned to Cole, who had just walked into the office. Cole shrugged. "Never heard of him," he replied, leaning over her desk to examine the photo. "But he looks important. Maybe the Spirit belonged to him." Emma studied the picture for a long moment. The bond between the boy and the horse was undeniable, and something about it tugged at her heart. Could Ethan be the key to understanding Spirit's despair? She made a decision. "I'm going to find him," she said with quiet determination. If Ethan was that important to Spirit, maybe he can help us now. Cole nodded, though his expression was skeptical. "Do you think it'll make a difference?" "It's been years." Emma glanced at Spirit's photo again, then out the window toward the paddock where the old Mustang stood motionless under the moonlight. "Horses don't forget," she murmured, "and if there's even the slightest chance we can help him, it's worth trying." As the sanctuary lights dimmed for the night, Emma began her search for the boy in the photograph. Little did she know her efforts would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. The following morning, the sanctuary was bathed in a soft golden light as Emma returned to Spirit's paddock. The Mustang remained in the same position as the day before, his head low and his body unmoving. It was as though the world outside held no meaning for him. The other horses milled about in their enclosures, occasionally casting curious glances at the silent figure in the corner. Emma felt a renewed sense of urgency. She clutched the photograph of Spirit and Ethan tightly as she made her way to the office. "There's something in his past we're missing," she said to Cole, who was already at his desk. Cole glanced up from his laptop. "Did you find anything new last night?" Emma handed him the photo. "This is Spirit. He had a bond with someone named Ethan. Look how happy he looks here. It's a complete contrast to the way he is now." Cole examined the image, his brow furrowing. "That kid must have been important, but it's been over 10 years. How do we even begin to find him?" "I'll start with the records," Emma replied, determination hardening her voice. "If Ethan ever registered Spirit or brought him to a vet, there might be a trial." The hours ticked by as Emma sifted through files and databases. She found bits and pieces of Spirit's journey, his capture as a wild Mustang in Nevada, his sale at a livestock auction, and his time at a small stable in Wyoming, but there was no mention of Ethan. Frustration gnawed at her, but she refused to give up. It wasn't until late afternoon that she stumbled upon a clue. A veterinary record from 2013 listed Ethan Whitaker as Spirit's owner during a routine checkup. Emma's heart leaped. She grabbed her phone and began searching for the name. After several failed attempts, she found a possible match: a man in his early 30s living just 2 hours away in Billings, Montana. "This has to be him," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and nerves. Cole looked over her shoulder. "Are you sure he's the same Ethan?" Emma hesitated for a moment, then shook her head. "I don't know, but it's the best lead we've got." Without wasting another minute, Emma dialed the number listed on Ethan's profile. The phone rang several times before a male voice answered. "Hello. Hi, is this Ethan Whitaker?" Emma asked, her words spilling out in a rush. "My name is Emma, and I manage the Montana Mustang Sanctuary. I'm calling about a horse named Spirit." There was a long pause on the other end. When Ethan finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Spirit. He's alive." "Yes," Emma said, relief flooding her. "He's been with us for a few years, but he's not doing well. He's refusing to eat, and I think he's given up hope." Ethan's voice cracked. "I thought I'd never see him again. He was my best friend when I was a teenager." "What happened to him?" Emma explained how Spirit had been passed through various owners and sanctuaries before arriving at their facility. "He's been struggling lately," she finished, "but when I found this photo of you two, I thought maybe reconnecting with you could make a difference. I'll come right away," Ethan said without hesitation. "I owe him that much." As Emma hung up, a sense of cautious optimism filled the room. "He's coming," she told Cole, her voice steady. "Let's hope the Spirit remembers him." Later that evening, Emma stood by the paddock, watching the Mustang as the stars began to dot the sky. For the first time in days, a flicker of hope stirred within her. Ethan's arrival could be the turning point Spirit so desperately needed. The next morning, the sanctuary buzzed with quiet anticipation. Emma had informed the staff about Ethan's impending visit, and everyone was eager to see if this man from Spirit's past could truly make a difference. The sanctuary had witnessed many touching moments, but the weight of this one felt extraordinary. Emma walked out to Spirit's paddock as the sun broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The Mustang stood in his usual spot, unmoving and detached. The air was cool, with a soft breeze rustling the trees nearby. "Good morning, boy," Emma said softly, leaning on the fence. She couldn't help but wonder how Spirit would react when Ethan arrived. Would he remember him? Would the bond they once shared still exist after so many years? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a car pulling into the sanctuary's gravel driveway. She turned to see a dusty blue pickup truck come to a stop. A man in his early 30s stepped out, his features a blend of nervousness and determination. His hair was slightly disheveled, and his hands trembled as he wiped them on his jeans. Emma immediately recognized him from the photo. "Ethan," she called, walking over to greet him. He nodded, his eyes scanning the sanctuary before landing. On the paddock in the distance. Is that him? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma placed a reassuring hand on his arm. That's Spirit. He hasn't been himself lately, but I think he's been waiting for you. Ethan's steps were hesitant as he approached the paddock. Each step felt like a journey back in time, his memories of Spirit flooding back the day they met, the countless hours spent riding through fields, the nights he whispered his secrets into Spirit's ear. All of it came rushing back. Spirit, Ethan called gently, his voice breaking slightly. It's me. At first, there was no reaction. Spirit remained still, his ears flat, his head low. Ethan stepped closer, leaning against the fence. Do you remember me, buddy? Emma and Cole watched from a distance, their breaths held as they waited for a sign. Any sign that Spirit recognized Ethan. The sanctuary was silent, the other horses seeming to sense the gravity of the moment. And then it happened. Spirit's ears twitched, swiveling toward the sound of Ethan's voice. Slowly, almost cautiously, the old Mustang turned his head, his dull eyes locking onto Ethan. For a moment, it seemed as though time stood still. It's me, Spirit, Ethan said, tears streaming down his face. I've missed you so much. Spirit took a tentative step forward, his nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air. Ethan reached out a trembling hand, and Spirit moved closer, his muzzle brushing against Ethan's palm. A soft nicker escaped the Mustang, the first sound he had made in weeks. Emma felt a lump rise in her throat as she watched the scene unfold. I've never seen anything like this, Cole whispered. Ethan ran his hand along Spirit's face, his voice filled with emotion as he spoke. You were always there for me when I needed you. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you. Spirit nuzzled Ethan's chest, his body language transforming before their eyes. The sadness that had weighed him down seemed to lift, replaced by a flicker of life. It was as if a switch had been flipped, reigniting the connection between them. Ethan stayed with Spirit for hours, talking to him, brushing his coat, and feeding him by hand. Spirit ate for the first time in days, his appetite slowly returning under Ethan's gentle care. The sanctuary staff watched in awe, their hearts warmed by the sight. As the sun set, Ethan leaned against the paddock fence, watching Spirit graze contentedly. Thank you for calling me, he said to Emma. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't come. Emma smiled, her heart full. It's not just Spirit you saved today. You've reminded all of us why we do what we do. The following days at the sanctuary were nothing short of extraordinary. Spirit's transformation had begun, albeit slowly. For the first time in weeks, he showed signs of life. His posture improved, his appetite returned, and his once dull eyes now held a faint spark of recognition. But the journey was far from over. Ethan had decided to stay at the sanctuary for a few days, unwilling to leave Spirit's side. He spent every moment he could with the Mustang, brushing his coat, feeding him, and taking him on short walks around the paddock. Their bond was undeniable, and the sanctuary staff couldn't help but feel moved by their reunion. You've got a natural way with him, Emma said one morning as she watched Ethan work with Spirit. Ethan smiled faintly, his hand resting gently on Spirit's neck. He was always there for me. I think I owe him my best. Emma nodded, sensing there was more to Ethan's words. She had seen it before, people carrying unspoken burdens, finding solace in the animals they loved. She didn't press him, though, knowing that healing, much like Spirit's recovery, took time. As the days went on, Spirit's strength grew, but so did the challenges. One afternoon, Ethan attempted to lead Spirit into the larger pasture for the first time. The Mustang balked at the open gate, his body stiffening and his ears pinned back. It was clear that something about the open space triggered a deep-seated fear. It's okay, buddy, Ethan said softly, his voice steady. You're safe now, Spirit snorted, pawing at the ground, his anxiety evident. Ethan stayed by his side, his hand firm but gentle on the lead rope. Emma watched from a distance, her heart in her throat as she saw the tension between them. Do you think he'll go? Cole asked, standing beside her. Emma shook her head. Not today, but Ethan knows what he's doing. He's patient, and that's what Spirit needs right now. After nearly an hour of coaxing, Spirit finally took a hesitant step forward. Ethan didn't rush him, allowing the Mustang to move at his own pace. By the time they reached the center of the pasture, Spirit's tension had eased, and he lowered his head to graze. Ethan let out a relieved laugh, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in hours. "You did it, Spirit," he whispered, rubbing the Mustang's neck. "We did it." But the progress wasn't without setbacks. One evening, a sudden storm rolled through the sanctuary, lightning flashing across the sky and thunder rumbling in the distance. The horses in the paddocks grew restless, their nervous whinnies carrying through the rain-soaked air. Emma and the staff rushed to secure the enclosures, but Spirit's anxiety escalated rapidly. He paced in his stall, his eyes wide with fear, when Ethan arrived, drenched from the rain. He found Spirit trembling, his body pressed against the stall door. Hey, it's okay," Ethan said, stepping inside. He placed a hand on Spirit's neck. His voice calmed despite the chaos outside. "I'm here." Spirit's breathing slowed as Ethan spoke to him, his words a steady reassurance. It took nearly an hour, but the Mustang eventually settled, leaning into Ethan's touch as the storm passed. When the skies cleared, Emma found Ethan still in the stall, his back against the wall, and Spirit standing beside him. "You didn't have to stay in there," she said gently. Ethan shrugged, a tired smile on his face. "He stayed with me through worse. It's the least I can do." Emma realized then that Ethan's connection to Spirit went beyond simple companionship. There was a shared history, a mutual understanding of pain and resilience that bound them together. By the end of the week, Spirit was grazing freely in the pasture, his steps confident and his spirit rekindled. Ethan, too, seemed lighter, as though the time spent with Spirit had healed a part of him that had long been broken. "You've done something incredible here," Emma told Ethan as they watched Spirit gallop across the field, his mane flowing in the wind. "Not just for him, but for all of us." Ethan smiled, his gaze fixed on the Mustang. "He saved me first. I'm just returning the favor." The sanctuary was abuzz with Spirit's progress. His transformation was undeniable. His coat began to shine again, his energy returned, and the fire in his eyes was rekindled. But just as things seemed to be turning around, a new challenge arose, one that no one saw coming. It was a crisp morning when Emma received an unexpected visitor, a man in his late 40s, dressed in a tailored suit and holding a leather briefcase, stood at the sanctuary's entrance. His demeanor was serious, his gaze sharp. "Good morning," he said, extending a hand. "My name is Thomas Avery. I'm here regarding Spirit." Emma felt a pang of unease. "What about him?" Thomas opened his briefcase, pulling out a stack of papers. "I represent a private estate that claims legal ownership of Spirit. It appears he was part of a property sale several years ago and was never officially transferred to the sanctuary. We're here to reclaim him." The words hit Emma like a punch to the gut. "Reclaim him? Spirit is a rescue. He's been with us for years." Thomas adjusted his glasses. "I understand, but the estate has documentation proving ownership. I'm afraid you'll need to hand him over." When Ethan heard the news, he was livid. "You can't take him," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "Spirit isn't just a horse, he's family." Thomas remained stoic. "I'm only doing my job, Mr. Whitaker. If you have any documentation to counter this claim, I suggest you provide it." Ethan turned to Emma, desperation in his eyes. "There has to be something we can do." Emma nodded, her determination hardening. "We'll fight this, Ethan. Spirit isn't going anywhere without a fight." The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal consultations, paperwork, and mounting tension. Ethan and Emma worked tirelessly to gather evidence of Spirit's rescue, digging through old records and contacting anyone who had been involved in his past. The sanctuary staff rallied behind them, their dedication to Spirit fueling their efforts. Meanwhile, Spirit seemed to sense the unease around him. He grew restless, pacing his paddock and nickering softly whenever Ethan approached. It was as though he understood the gravity of the situation. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan stood by Spirit's paddock, his hand resting on the Mustang's neck. "I won't let them take you," he whispered. "Not after everything we've been through." Spirit nuzzled Ethan's shoulder, his warm breath a silent reassurance. In that moment, Ethan realized just how much the Mustang had taught him, not just about resilience, but about loyalty, love, and the unbreakable bond between them. The breakthrough came late one night when Emma uncovered a crucial piece of evidence. A transfer document from Spirit's previous owner to the sanctuary, signed but never properly filed. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to challenge the estate's claim. This could work, she said, with hope rising in her voice. Emma told Ethan, holding up the document, it shows the intention to transfer ownership, even if it wasn't finalized. Ethan felt a surge of hope. Let's use it. Spirit deserves to stay. Here, the day of the meeting with Thomas arrived, and the tension was palpable. Emma, Ethan, and the sanctuary's lawyer presented their case, outlining Spirit's journey and the evidence they had uncovered. Thomas listened intently, his expression unreadable. When they finished, he stood, smoothing his suit. This is compelling, he admitted. I'll need to discuss this with the estate, but I believe we can reach an agreement. As Thomas left, Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Do you think it'll be enough? He asked Emma. She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We've done everything we can. Now we wait. That evening, Ethan sat in Spirit's paddock, watching the Mustang graze under the fading light. No matter what happens, he said softly, you've changed my life, and I'll fight for you until the very end. Spirit lifted his head, his eyes meeting Ethan's. In that gaze was a quiet strength, a reminder that they had both overcome impossible odds before, and they could do it again. The sanctuary buzzed with nervous anticipation as the days ticked by, each one feeling longer than the last. Spirit continued to thrive under Ethan's care, but the looming uncertainty cast a shadow over the sanctuary. The staff worked in quiet solidarity, their shared hope resting on Emma and Ethan's efforts to keep Spirit where he belonged. Thomas Avery's return was scheduled for Friday morning, and the tension was palpable. Emma had stayed up late every night, combing through records, consulting with lawyers, and preparing for what felt like the sanctuary's most important battle. Ethan, meanwhile, spent every possible moment with Spirit, strengthening their bond and drawing comfort from the Mustang's resilience. On the morning of Thomas's arrival, Ethan stood by Spirit's paddock, his hand resting on the horse's broad neck. The rising sun painted the fields in soft gold, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in his chest. No matter what happens today, he whispered, I'll fight for you. I won't let them take you. Spirit snorted softly, his ears flicking toward Ethan's voice. The bond between them had deepened in recent weeks, and Spirit seemed to draw strength from Ethan's presence. The Mustang's once dull coat now gleamed in the sunlight, a testament to his remarkable recovery. Thomas arrived promptly at 9, his polished demeanor as sharp as ever. He was accompanied by a representative from the estate, a stern-looking woman, with a clipboard and an air of authority. Emma greeted them at the entrance, her expression calm but resolute. Thank you for coming, she said, gesturing toward the office. Shall we discuss this inside? Thomas nodded, but his gaze drifted to Spirit's paddock. The Mustang stood tall, his head held high, as though sensing the significance of the moment. He looks well, Thomas remarked. It's clear you've taken good care of him. Ethan, standing a few feet away, couldn't contain his frustration. We've done more than take care of him. We've saved him. Spirit isn't just property. You can't reduce him to a piece of paper. Thomas glanced at him, his expression unreadable. I understand your passion, Mr. Whitaker, but this is a legal matter. Emotions, unfortunately, don't change that. Inside the office, Emma presented her findings. She began with Spirit's documented history at the sanctuary, detailing his care and rehabilitation. Then she unveiled the transfer document she had uncovered, highlighting the original owner's intent to relinquish Spirit to the sanctuary. This document, while incomplete, demonstrates a clear intention to transfer ownership, Emma explained. It proves that Spirit was meant to be here. The estate's representative studied the document, her expression thoughtful. It's compelling, she admitted. However, the lack of official filing leaves room for interpretation. Thomas leaned back in his chair, his gaze shifting between Emma and Ethan. I believe we can resolve this without further conflict, he said. Finally, the estate isn't interested in removing Spirit from a place where he's thriving. Perhaps we can reach a compromise. We can formalize his transfer to the sanctuary. Relief washed over the room like a tidal wave. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, his shoulders sagging with the release of tension. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for giving him the chance to stay." Emma smiled, her eyes shining with triumph. "We'll do whatever it takes to ensure Spirit's continued care." As the paperwork was finalized, Ethan returned to the paddock to share the news with Spirit. The Mustang greeted him with a soft nicker, nuzzling his shoulder as if sensing the shift in the air. "You're staying, boy," Ethan said, his voice trembling. "You're safe, we're safe." Spirit lifted his head, his ears swiveling forward. For the first time in weeks, he galloped across the paddock, his powerful legs carrying him with the grace and strength of his younger days. Ethan watched, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. By evening, the sanctuary celebrated the Spirit's victory. The staff gathered around the paddock, watching as the Mustang moved freely, his spirit fully restored. Ethan stood by the fence, a quiet smile on his face as he reflected on the journey they had shared. "You fought for him," Emma said, joining him, "and in doing so, you reminded all of us why we do this." Ethan nodded, his gaze never leaving Spirit. "He's more than a horse. He's family." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sanctuary in hues of gold and purple, Spirit stood at the crest of a hill, silhouetted against the fading light. In his stance was a quiet strength, a testament to the resilience that had carried him through. For Ethan, it was a moment he would carry with him forever, a reminder of the power of connection and the lengths we go to for those we love. The sanctuary settled into a peaceful rhythm after the ordeal with Spirit's ownership. The staff, rejuvenated by the victory, approached their work with renewed purpose. Spirit had become a symbol of resilience, not just for the sanctuary but for everyone who witnessed his transformation. The Mustang, who once stood on the brink of despair, now galloped freely across the pastures, his mane flowing in the wind like a banner of triumph. Ethan had decided to extend his stay indefinitely. The sanctuary had become his second home, a place where he felt connected not only to Spirit, but to a community that shared his passion for animals. His days were spent working alongside Emma and Cole, helping care for the horses and even mentoring new volunteers. One afternoon, as Ethan brushed Spirit's coat, Emma approached with a smile. "He's looking incredible," she said, watching the Mustang with admiration. Ethan nodded, his hand moving rhythmically with the brush. "It's hard to believe he's the same horse. It's like he's come back to life." Emma leaned against the fence. "You gave him something we couldn't. You gave him a reason to fight." The sanctuary soon became known for Spirit's story, drawing visitors eager to meet the legendary Mustang. Ethan and Emma worked together to share his journey through social media and local events, using his story to advocate for the rescue and rehabilitation of other horses. Spirit's newfound fame brought donations and volunteers, allowing the sanctuary to expand its reach and save more animals in need. One day, a family arrived with their young daughter, who had recently recovered from a long illness. Her parents explained how Spirit's story had inspired her during her recovery. "She wants to meet the horse who never gave up," the mother said, her eyes glistening with emotion. Ethan led the little girl to Spirit's paddock, where the Mustang stood grazing. The girl approached hesitantly, her small hand reaching out to touch his neck. Spirit, ever gentle, lowered his head, nuzzling her shoulder. The girl's laughter rang out, a pure and joyful sound that brought tears to her parents' eyes. "He has a way of knowing when someone needs him," Ethan said softly, watching the interaction. Emma stood nearby, her heart full as she observed the scene. Spirit's story wasn't just about survival. It was about hope, the kind that rippled outward and touched everyone around him. As the months passed, Ethan found himself reflecting on how much Spirit had changed his life. The Mustang had taught him lessons about resilience, trust, and the power of connection that he never imagined possible. For Ethan, Spirit wasn't just a horse. He was a partner, a friend, and a reminder of what it meant to fight for the things that mattered. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan sat by Spirit's paddock, watching the horse graze under the fading light. "You saved me too, you know," he said quietly. I thought I was here to help you, but you've given me more than I could ever repay. Spirit lifted his head, his dark eyes meeting Ethan's. At that moment, no words were needed. The bond between them spoke volumes, a connection forged in hardship and strengthened by love. The sanctuary continued to thrive, its fields filled with horses and humans alike, each with their own stories of healing and transformation. Spirit remained at the heart of it all, a living testament to the power of compassion and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. As the seasons changed, Ethan knew one thing for certain. Spirit's journey wasn't just about survival. It was about finding purpose, creating connections, and inspiring others to believe that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope. If Spirit's story inspired you, remember that courage and compassion can overcome any challenge. Subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with someone who loves inspiring stories like this one. Together, we can spread messages of hope and resilience, one story at a time.